hello and welcome to Cinema Express. My name is Ram Venkat Srikar. Today we have with us cinematographer Dani Sanchez-Lopez to talk about his latest film, Virata Parvam. Hello, Dani.
Hi, how are you? Good to
I'm
see you.
good. I'm good. Thanks for asking. Danny, I was just reading through an older interview of yours, uh, from the one that you had given in Mahanati during Mahanati. Mahanati was also
Hmm,
a period film, and Virata Parvam is also a period film. But they
correct.
both these films they share a completely different visual palette, right? Mahanati is decidedly it has more glitters, like it's decidedly that way. Virata Parvam, on the other hand, it's more earthy. Can you tell
Hmm.
us a little bit about how you about the ground rules you had set before started working on Virata Parvam?
That's a good question actually because I work with grand rules. Like that's
Okay.
something that I like to set up with my director before we start the shoot. You're right. You're completely right that Virata Parvam and Mahanati, they both share the fact that they're both period pieces, and they're both stories by women.
Yeah.
The, the
Yeah.
the female perspective of Mahanati is
Hmm.
also shared by Virata Parvam, where Sai
Yeah.
Pallavi is actually Janela is the real hero, right, or the real
Yeah.
heroine of the film. This time, though, we are not going from the 40s to the 80s. We're actually like established in the 90s, the beginning of the 90s, right?
Hmm. Hmm. Hmm.
So we talked like severely, like we talked for many hours, Venu and I, about his story and how he would like to set it up in rural India, rural Andhra, rural Telangana, where things happen, but it's never captured. There is never recorded. There are
Yeah.
things that never come out to light. So that was that is the rarely seen in cinemas, right? So
Hmm.
for that matter, we actually watched many documentaries on the subject, many documentaries
Wow.
that have been shown in Telangana, but good ones, like
Okay.
ones that you certainly know that they're shooting in real locations, but they actually set up the shot.
Hmm.
Like
Hmm.
it's not
Hmm.
like they are capturing some reality with their phone. No, no, no. They actually are setting up the camera, and it's the elements in the frame that are moving.
Okay.
And with that, we started talking about time within the shot and not cutting. Using single takes as much as possible and giving some kind of movement, organic movement that would actually enhance the performances of the artists, but
Wow.
also like really tell the story, right? So for that, he actually mentioned that he loved Tarkovsky, right? As a
Right.
Russian filmmaker.
Yeah.
Yeah, and we watched a couple of films by his. I also told him that I had met Andrei Zvyagintsev, who's now in a coma, but
You had
it's an
worked with
amazing
him. You
filmmaker.
worked with him, right?
I wish. I was at
Good.
Sundance. I was working for Sundance
Okay.
when he received an award, and I was lucky enough that he asked me a couple of questions on cinematography when I was with
Right.
him.
Okay.
Uh,
Okay. Hmm.
yeah, he's a fantastic visual director,
Hmm.
and all of his movies have this component, he shares with Tarkovsky in a way. And
Hmm.
it's
Hmm. Hmm.
the fact that he like the camera movements,
Hmm.
the light moment of the day, the framing. It's all telling the story, and that's where we started off with Venom. Yeah.
Were these your references? Because I was reading an interview, and you and even your IMDb profile says that you speak five languages, but visual language is your favorite language. And in the interview, you had
It's a language
stated,
we share, right?
yeah. So, and even in the interview, you had stated that you would draw references from a Tarkovsky film, and Venu would suggest some different references. So, were these
Hmm.
your visual references for Virata Parvam, or were there any other
Hmm.
references?
So for Virata Parvam,
Hmm.
one of the first things we talked about is that we wanted to really source um, all the visual design
Hmm.
from its ground. So we
Right.
actually went on location scouts to
Hmm.
the real locations where the story had happened,
Hmm.
and we started taking pictures. We started like seeing how people moved over there, what they looked like. And then we started. Yeah, we watched the mirror several times. We
Mirror.
capture Stalker, and we started applying that, a bit to those environments and seeing how they translated there.
Right.
Obviously, the color palette was going to be earthy. It
Mm.
was going to be organic. It was going to be colors that you can find on the real locations, which are earth,
Mm.
trees, so greens, ochres, all that ramification started
Mm.
happening. And we saw something very clear. When we moved to these locations, we saw that it was not such a like panoramic landscape. It was not like a desert,
Oh,
like
okay.
Lawrence of Arabia. It
Mm.
was not like the ocean, which was endless. It was very like there were a lot of trees, there were a lot of rocks,
Mm.
like and the story, it's a little bit about being up and being down. Some part of
Unevenness of the
society,
landscape.
exactly, that is
Yeah.
actually oppressed. So
Mm.
we wanted to give that sensation
Mm.
without resorting to something that right now it could remind us of something old here, in India. I don't think 4:3 would have been the ideal choice for the aspect ratio, but
Mm.
it was 1:5 that we decided on,
Right.
which
Yeah.
is a realistic, you could call it a less um, a less like bombastic kind of
Mhm.
aspect ratio, where comparatively to
It's
the
not
actual
compressed. It's
panorama.
not compressed. It still has a cinematic feel. Yeah.
Correct. Yeah, without really compressing it to the academy, which
Yeah.
is something that we haven't used for a while now. It's going back, and it's coming back for certain stories. I don't think this is the story that needed that. It
Mm.
needed the relationship of two people. It was like 4:3 is more like for one person,
Yeah.
whereas 1:5 I feel is for a relationship of two people that
Mm.
even though they're immersed in a background in a location, it's actually about these two people at the end. No?
Yeah. So, when
Mm.
you move from a studio setup to real locations, how does your
Mm.
the lighting process change? Does it become more
Mm. Mm.
challenging? How is that? How does that work?
It's really interesting because after Mahanati, I think everyone thought that I was very good with sets,
Okay. Yeah.
which is
Yeah.
it was a challenge for me because I despise being on set, because I
Okay.
mean I love being restricted, I love
Oh.
a challenge, so when you are on a location, you have to adapt reality to what you imagine, what
Mm.
you like, what is written in your visuals. So I
Mm.
love that. I love actually the challenge of doing that. Whereas when you are on a set, you kind of have to build something, and you can actually like cheat and tear
Yeah.
down, a wall, and you can light from anywhere. So
Yeah.
even when I'm on set, I actually like tend to think about where the light would be if I were on a rail location, and I
Oh.
start with that. That's how
Hmm.
I like to start lighting in a
Yeah.
studio. So for like what's different when I go to a real location, and something that sometimes I have to fight because being abroad, sometimes they bring you like directly to shoot, and I have to
Hmm.
ask them like, please bring me like a couple of days before because I need to location scout. Is the time of day. That's
Hmm.
very important. Like
Hmm.
during daytime, you have to dance with the sun, right? Like the
Right.
sun has a path, and it depends on the time of the year, the season, and whatever, but it has a path. And you have to adapt your scene and your blocking to whatever the light is at all times. And
Hmm.
during the day, you even have to like do your own AD and
Hmm.
think when you can shoot some scenes and when you can shoot the others. And I'm so used to doing this for commercials and music videos, that I also do it myself. Like, I mean, the AD is happy
Hmm.
that I'm doing that because it's the easier way to work around it. And also nights, nights are night exteriors.
Yeah.
um, Virata Parvam is filled with night exteriors and gigantic. If you remember that scene in Bonalu, I
Hmm.
actually managed to kind of restrain it within that complex. Right, it's a
Right.
little village, so you can,
Hmm. Hmm. Hmm.
you know, we Krunal, who was my first assistant during the movie, Krunal, Sadrani, and Nishant,
Hmm.
and Praveen from Light and Light, we started devising how we could do this with the restraints of budget and with the
Okay.
restraints of time,
Hmm.
because it was an action scene, right? So how
Yeah.
could we do it? and that you have to plan very well ahead, because you have to go for cranes, you have to go for moonlights. Moonlights are structures that you actually set light inside. It's like a light
Right.
box, but
And you
gigantic
hang
in overhead.
them. Yeah, you hang them.
Yeah,
Yeah,
we
from
hang
the
them
top.
from.
Yeah.
So we had a light box, and we had like several lights, so we could actually we could give Peter Hine the ability to shoot in every direction, which is rare, because most of the time we ask for accesses. We finish this access, then we go to the other access, so we don't have to relight again, go to the same lighting. We can actually move to this angle, and then we'll shoot that angle. In action is very difficult, because obviously there's continuity for bruises or hair or costume. So it's a little bit more complicated. So we managed to do that. The birth of Vanilla was harder.
Okay, the
because
opening.
space was bigger.
Okay.
And now we have the Phantom camera, which shoots 1,000 FPS.
Frames
so
per-
you need you need so much light for that. So that was different. But I think the worst or the most difficult was when Vanilla is carrying the grenade on top of her head.
Right. Yeah.
She's going through a really long path. Like, maybe we don't see it so much in the edit, because now the edit is a little shorter.
Okay.
But there was a whole thrill that we wanted to set up, following Vanilla from when she takes the grenade up to the moment that the cops catch her.
Wow.
And that was a really long scene, and I had to light the whole path.
Wow.
And follow her, from
Was it a
behind,
continuous shot? Was it a continuous shot?
It was a continuous shot. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
And you're holding
a lot
the
of
camera and
continuous
running
shot,
with it.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of continuous shot, like in general, like you tend to see that in the edit they're actually cut. A lot of Mahanati's montages, for songs, and actually scenes that we shot in single takes. But yeah, like they end up there. The same way, if you see the scene, like the first 10 seconds, that was probably like 2 minutes of we establishing the whole ambience, and we see that there's some cops behind them. The environment is very dark, and they're like, there's two women alone at night in a little village where there's barely any light, right? So that was established over there, but for the sake of duration, it was cut. Yeah.
Wow. Does it hurt when that happens?
So much. But I'm convincing Rana to release the never seen flashback of Ravana.
Right.
So I hope that he's listening right now. So we can actually see it. There was a moment in which Vanilla is looking for him, and someone reminds him that that he knows him, and we see that. We see a little bit of a flashback on Ravana. Right now, there's a couple of shots of that flashback in the warrior part. But it has the whole chunk of the script.
I had a question about this. You had tweeted about the warrior poem and how you shot that, because it is Vanilla's imagination of Ravana, right? How did you approach that, and was it shot in that style?
Ram, I'm amazed that you are so researched on the topic. No. It's fantastic, because we can start the conversation already forward. I love this.
Thank you.
So yeah, for the warrior poem, because we enter the imagination of the words of Ramana inside Vanilla's head, right? We thought that we wanted to see what it might like, what memory looks like. No, what does memory look like?
Yeah,
we talked about the work of Doyle, Christopher Doyle, with Wong Kar-wai in some of the most lyrical moments. Wong Kar-wai takes FPS and shutter speed and changes it.
Yeah.
So you see that it's a poetic shot, and that we're not seeing reality, we're seeing something like a memory. And we wanted that. We wanted to achieve that. So we shot massively for that warrior poem. There's a lot that didn't make it into the warrior poem. That warrior poem changed many times, because it's such a powerful song. It's such a important moment in the film, because this establishes I mean, you have to fall in love with Ravana, you know, like you have to fall in love with this character. So you have to understand what he's going through. The lyrics are telling you this, the music is telling you this, but the visuals should also like tell you this, right? So we shot massively, we shot many things. We shot that explosion that you see over there, but it was a little bit longer. We shot a moment of the Molotov cocktail, you know, that was there as well. But we shot other stuff that's not there. I missed that. But I think at the end of the day, taking the flashback inside the warrior poem made the warrior poem like a much stronger piece, and I'm glad that that happened.
Lovely. So one of my favorite things about the film, while I was watching the film, what stood out to me was because the film is set in the 90s, you had to use natural light a lot, right? You couldn't go for this flashy lights because they didn't such lighting didn't exist back in the 90s. And almost every character, every good character in the film is at least once shot using candlelight. They are just holding a diya or a candle, and everything around them is darkness. Like it's just them, be it Vanilla, be it the teacher, be it Rana. Almost every character gets a shot like that. Were those purposefully shot to reflect this natural light and the fact that they are living in a dark world?
Yeah, I think it was a DOP from my own country, a Spanish cinematographer Nestor Almendros, that said that in a period piece you have to light less. Like you have to light like the lighting was at that time, right? So we wanted again organic, motivated lighting, and at that point, what motivates lighting is just candlelight, and at night we don't have anything else, right? So it's moonlight and it's candlelight, so we struggle, to actually like see when we could use candlelight, when we couldn't, when it was just like the light of the night. Even in that scene where in the grenade scene, like there's I wanted a big difference between the light of like where Ravana and the Dalam is, and the light of the city, of the village, right? The village has electricity. It's the 90s, electricity was there, but it's it's at the entrance and that's it, like once, not even at the arch, so we wanted to reflect that. We wanted to be kind of realistic with the way where we approach this. Same way with days. I mean, most of the time, like we just filled in real sun. Like Lubezki and Malik for Tree of Life, they actually tested so many HMIs and they all give some kind of green or magenta. They never liked it, so they stopped using it. I try to use at least, the most minimalistic lights that they shot the search, So we would actually struggle to find, like we had the challenge to use the least lighting possible. Sometimes it was difficult, especially when you use the Phantom, where suddenly like you need such flood of light. But I think even for the Phantom, which this was the first time that I've used that camera, and I've always seen it, like when it comes, it just changes even the narrative of melancholia, Antichrist. There's a scene, even Sherlock Holmes, like there's always like a reason why that's there, right? And in this one, we wanted it to be integrated within the scene, which is very difficult, to tell you the least, because obviously it's a little bit like what we did with Mahanati, right? That like we had the light of the set, and then with that same lighting, I had to emulate Marcus Barlitz's like visual designs, right? So I actually was thinking about that when I was lighting my scene. So when we go to black and white to the original, it looks like, oh wow, like this is the lighting that we had before, but now it's film, right? So it's the same. Like when we use Phantom, I had to take down that same lighting kind of a lot to actually like, let it open and flood when we used the Phantom, which is it's very painful for the actors because suddenly they're like, they're like in Atapari Falls, like in this middle of this waterfall, and you have this gigantic light on them, and that is you actually need to be a good actor to actually get back into the scene.
Now, you said that you used a Phantom camera for this film, right? How do you decide the equipment for for the film that you are shooting?
Hmm. Hmm. So for this movie,
Hmm.
I wanted. I mean, even though it's a period piece, I
Hmm.
wanted to make sure that I always make sure that we are up to date with whatever equipment we're using.
Okay.
Even with lighting, we did the same.
Hmm.
The Phantom, the Alexa LF
Hmm.
had just come out when we started shooting,
Hmm.
and it has a different. It's a full frame sensor, so
Hmm.
it's a little bit bigger,
Okay.
and it kind of matched the fact that we were using 185 because it
Right.
crops less, right?
Okay.
So
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
and it's so and it gives like even though we wanted to tell this story that was realistic,
Hmm.
we wanted to make it like in the biggest format that we could, and
Hmm.
sensor wise. So we used old signature prime lenses, which were completely new, and they were, they're the master primes of this new LF.
Okay.
So I think master primes are they're the closest to what reality looks like.
Okay.
Cook, for
Okay.
example, like does something, like changes the way things look.
Hmm.
But with Ari,
Hmm.
they always try to give you an idea of realism. So that's why we went for this camera. Now the Phantom is different. The Phantom is for heightened moments, where
Right.
where you actually need that. And blending the two was quite difficult.
Hmm.
First of all, on the shoot, but
Hmm.
then obviously in color grading. But gladly I had the collaboration of Glenn Castillo, who's
Mm-hmm.
an Indian colorist who did Asuran, Bak
Okay.
Milkabag, Entre
Okay.
Dos Aguas, which is a
Hmm.
Spanish film, and
Hmm.
Many film Mamcro.
Okay.
He's a very talented guy. He lives in Poland, so I
Okay.
I post him,
Okay.
and he's done already two of my movies. Two of
Wow.
my movies. He has done this one, and one I shot after this one and has released already, called
Hmm.
Polar. It's
Okay.
a neon wire that I shot on 16 millimeter in Spain.
Oh, wow.
Yeah,
Wow.
looks
Lovely.
really cool.
I want to watch that. So, Danny, you are
Yeah,
also into documentary filmmaking, right? How differently
yeah.
do you approach fiction and documentary?
It's very different. It's
Hmm.
a whole different ball game, right? It's a
Hmm.
whole different animal
Hmm.
because with even though you prep a lot for a documentary, this subject, yeah, it's the same. Like the script kind of dictates what you need to do, but with the documentary, there's some kind of structure, but you have to be open to
Hmm.
other things. Um, when we talk about fiction,
Hmm.
in narrative, right?
Hmm.
In literature, we have short fiction, we have novels, right? And
Yeah.
that seems to be like what shorts are and what features are. But when we talk about documentary, we only mention documentary. But
Yeah.
there's nonfiction.
Yeah. It's
It's
a
so
broad
vast.
term. Hmm. Hmm. Hmm.
Yeah, an
Hmm.
article is
Yeah.
nonfiction.
Hmm.
Like an article in the press
Yeah.
is nonfiction. A
Hmm.
thesis is nonfiction. And there's the epistolar, like literature, is also nonfiction.
Yeah.
So it's so different. Like every documentary that I've done
Hmm.
has taken a different path, and I always find it very challenging, but really interesting,
Hmm.
because with film, with fiction, you kind of have like this content and you explore it, whereas with documentary you are in the content, and
Yeah.
and now you have to explore it.
Yeah.
So I think
Yeah.
it's longer, because you shoot longer for a documentary. You shoot much more.
Hmm.
Um, but you learn, like what you learn as a person after a documentary. Maybe you don't learn so. I mean, you learn a lot about visual language with a fiction, but
Hmm.
with documentary you learn about life. And I like to do both because I
Okay.
think makes me a better person.
What's your favorite scene or shot from Virata Parvam? I know this is a very difficult question for you to answer, to pick just a few, but if you can,
Mm,
what are some of
mm.
your favorite shots or scenes from the film?
So I was an editor before I became a cinematographer. So
Okay.
my favorite shots in movies are the ones that we had planned.
Hmm.
the edit ahead of time, and it works. Like
No.
sometimes, you plan the edit and it doesn't
Hmm.
work.
Hmm.
But there's a couple of scenes where that happens, like Ramana receives the letter
Hmm.
that there's a covered agent
Hmm.
in the Dalam, and he turns around, right? We have a
Hmm.
shot from here, from the
Yeah.
back,
Uh,
where we're seeing the letter, and then he turns around and looks away in the horizon. And when he turns again, we're in the scene with Barataka and
hmm.
Ragwana,
Right.
and then Ragana is like, like she's a cover agent for this. Suddenly, like there's this triangle, and we
Hmm.
focus on this axis,
Hmm.
Ravana and Ragwana, right?
Right.
And we're here, and suddenly, boom, boom,
Right.
suddenly Barataka is there, right?
Yeah.
And we show her again because she was missing from this
For
conversation.
this
Suddenly
word.
she's
Yeah.
like,
Yeah.
no,
Yeah.
I also think it's her. And then the camera kind of goes and crosses Ravana, and we stay
Uh,
with her, and then we do the same on the other side. And then suddenly, when everyone agrees, that's
hmm.
when we see the three of them together. And
Right. Hmm.
that's the kind of filmmaking that I like. That's the kind of visual language I like.
Now you had just told me that you were into editing before becoming a cinematographer, and you also
Yeah.
select scripts for Sundance, right? You have a role with the Sundance Institute. So tell me, how does
Mhm.
your knowledge in scripts or editing help you as a cinematographer?
When I finished my MFA in
Hmm.
cinematography, you need to do a thesis,
Hmm.
and I did 5 movies. Like I was lucky enough
Hmm.
that year I got really good films to shoot, really good
Okay.
shorts. We shot in 45. It was perfect. And I
Hmm.
got the best of the I got the award for best cinematographer of the year. Blah blah.
Hmm.
Like these things that you do in film
Hmm.
school. When I got out into the world, though, like I actually got a job at Sundance, the Sundance
No.
Institute, and people didn't understand that. They were like, "But you're a
Okay.
cinematographer. Like, why are you doing reading scripts?"
Okay.
That access that
Hmm.
Sundance gave me to content that people were doing before it came out was so interesting to me. To see where things were shaping, or how directors approached scripts differently, but also projects differently, because we were not valuing only the screenplays, because
Hmm.
some directors basically, like, their screenplays are like 5 lines. Some
Hmm.
screenplays are like super long. It's like India, where you have 300
Yeah.
pages, and
Yeah.
then
It's a
that has
book.
to be contained in, yeah, you have to,
Hmm.
yeah, like Mario Puzo's Superman,
Yeah.
right? So, which was 2 movies, suddenly you have NTR1, NTR2, right?
Yeah.
Things like that, Bahubali 1, Bahubali 2. So these things happen, right? So it's the same. Like, I think it gave me access to a world of cinema today
Hmm.
that I wouldn't have gotten anywhere else, and that was formative as well. I came to India partly because of Sundance.
Hmm. Okay.
It was when I joined them that they decided that one of their focuses was going to be India, and
Okay.
they landed here with a screenwriters lab. The first 3 years, they selected scripts like Lunchbox
Hmm.
or
Oh,
Experience
okay.
with Truth.
Hmm.
That was by a friend of mine called Nafneet Behel. We did another movie called Sampachhattar, which is still
Okay.
banned for
Okay.
political. It's a political thriller, still banned.
Okay.
It's probably one of my best works. Everyone in Bombay has seen it. No
Okay.
one, it's not out yet. Like,
Ah.
it's a myth.
Okay. Ah.
So that's the kind of cinema is not science. Like, what paths do you lead to make your art? I mean, I don't know.
You can't
Like
define it.
people
Yeah.
ask me, like, students ask me, like, what do I do to become a cinematographer? I don't know. Like, it just happened. It's true that um, it helps that you go to a film school if you're
Hmm.
not in the film industry, because you build connections. It is
Hmm.
good if uh, if uh, if you actually work on film, even as a PA, because then
Hmm.
you're connected with more people. You can show that you know about film, and the best thing I think is actually watching films, and
Wow.
really seeing through them, really seeing them. I'm an avid movie watcher. I love watching everything and anything. I think every film has its value and its potential and its interest. Some, I like more because I'm a person, but I think everything that anything that you watch can be interesting if you see it through the proper glass.
Lovely. So this is something even the great Kamal Hassan said. Kamal Hassan, the director, producer, actor, he said he has torn almost every hat in filmmaking, but the favorite role he has enjoyed playing is that of an audience. So thank you very much for your time, Dani. Thank
Thank
you
you,
very
Ram.
much.
It
I
was
had a
a very interesting interview. Huh? I'm going to keep your contacts and let's keep in touch. I would love to
thank you.
hear more about you next time.
That means a lot. Thank you very much, Danny. Thank you very
Thank
much. And
you.
all the
And
best for everything. All the best for Project K. All
thank
the
you.
best.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye. Bye. Bye.